Thank you, Somshala, and I would like to thank the organizers for making me a part of this national symposium. I would be talking to you about infectious keratitis, current concepts and future therapies. There are no financial or proprietary interests, and I would be basically talking about bacterial, fungal, and parasitic keratitis. After taking a good history and doing a slit lamp evaluation, it is imperative to actually grade these ulcers into mild, moderate, and severe because that determines what treatment you are going to start. Corneal scraping and microbiology is the mainstay of treatment of any case of microbial keratitis, and the most important stain in these cases is KOH, because once you know that that is positive or negative, whether you have to give antifungal therapy or not. Apart from this gram stain, and special stains may be done whenever required. Cultures have to be sent on blood agar, chocolate agar, and Sebrod dextrose agar, and not only the corneal scrapes, but any material which is there along with it, such as suture, or sometimes when you've done lamellar grafts, in those cases, the material may have to be taken from within the interface, whether it is post-L keratitis or infectious crystalline keratopathy after LASIK, or even a DSEK, needs to be taken and evaluated. There is a role of confocal microscopy, especially in cases of culture-negative microbial keratitis, because it identifies the filamentous fungi such as Aspergillus, Fusarium, Nocardia, and Acanthamoeba. When a diagnosis of bacterial keratitis is made based on the smear or the culture, in cases of mild ulcers which are less than 3 millimeters in size, not involving the visual axis, fluoroquinolones can be started. However, if it is a moderate ulcer more than 3 millimeters in size involving the visual axis, combination therapy with fortified cefazolin 5% and tobramycin or with fluoroquinolone can be started to cover both the gram-positive and the negative organisms. These are the various trials and literature in mild or moderate bacterial keratitis which were compared with fluoroquinolone with the combination therapy, and all of these found that they were equivalent. This is the trial that we conducted at our center, moxifloxacin 0.5% for mild to moderate keratitis, and we randomized 220 patients to receive either moxiflox or combination therapy, and we did not find any difference between the two groups. And we also obtained similar results which are yet unpublished with getafloxacin in another randomized control trial. For specific organisms such as MRSA, specific antibiotics are required. For MRSA, vancomycin, Pseudomonas keratitis, ceftazidime, Mycobacterium fortitum kiloi, and Nocardia amikacin. Systemic antibiotics are indicated in cases of perforations, impending perforations, scleral involvement, and when the organisms are Neisseria and Haemophilus. And adjunctive therapy have to be given in all cases of microbial keratitis. The role of corticosteroids is controversial. They are added to antibiotics when the organism is identified, that is when you have the culture report in hand, and when it has already been treated after 24 to 72 hours of antibiotics. There is no role of systemic steroids in a case of microbial keratitis. This is the SCUT trial run by the Arvind Eye Hospital, a randomized control trial where no significant difference in the visual acuity, infiltrate scar or size, reepithelialization or corneal perforation was found when they compared prednisolone 1% versus placebo therapy. But there was significant effect of steroids in ulcers with baseline visual acuity of less than counting fingers and central location, and there were no safety concerns with the adjunctive use of steroids. Coming to the next keratitis, that is the fungal keratitis, very important for us because it's responsible for more than half of our cases. In northern India, Aspergillus is the commonest organism, whereas in southern India, Fusarium is the commonest organism. And the mainstay for treatment is 5% netamycin, which is tapered if the response is there over 4 to 7 days interval. However, if there is no response, then one adds amphotericin B or voriconazole, and therapy lasts for 3 to 4 weeks. In the various studies which have compared netamycin with iconazole, itraconazole, and voriconazole, including the mycotic ulcer treatment trial, it has been shown that netamycin is superior to voriconazole. This was the MUT trial done in 368 patients, again a randomized control trial, showed better visual acuity, less perforations, and less therapeutic keratoplasty with netamycin as compared to voriconazole, where netamycin and voriconazole were used as a primary drug therapy for fungal keratitis. and they advocated that voriconazole should not be used as monotherapy in filamentous keratitis. However, for people in North India, the picture may be a little different because their organisms were most commonly Fusarium and followed by Aspergillus, and for us it is opposite, and we all know that Fusarium responds not so well to natamycin as compared to voriconazole. Systemic antifungals are indicated in cases of ulcers which are more than 6 millimeters, more than 2/3 involvement, scleritis, post-PK, and in endophthalmitis. And this is a case which did not respond to topical medications, so we had to give topical and systemic voriconazole. Because of the limitations of the various antifungal agents, we have the role of the targeted drug delivery, which could be in the form of intracameral or intracorneal injections. Intracameral are given when it is not responsive to medical therapy with thick hypopyon and endothelial exudates, and voriconazole is better as compared to amphotericin B. These are the various studies in literature, anecdotal case reports and case series which show a 90% healing rate, but none of them are randomized controlled trials. This is a case which responded to intracameral amphotericin B. There are side effects which include pain, anterior chamber inflammation, more with the amphotericin B than with the voriconazole, cataract, and theoretically there could be also infection. Intrastomal injections are indicated in cases of deep mycotic keratitis, non-perforated corneal ulcers, not responsive to conventional, topical, and systemic antifungal therapy for 4 weeks. And these are the published studies of intrastomal injections, 2 of them from our center, which have shown good results. These were the first 3 cases that we showed which responded to intrastomal voriconazole. And we did a randomized control trial to evaluate topical versus intrastomal voriconazole as an adjunct to natamycin, where the cases didn't respond for 2 weeks on natamycin in cases of recalcitrant fungal keratitis. And these are 2 cases where topical natamycin and voriconazole was given from that series, and 2 sets of cases where intrastomal voriconazole and topical natamycin were given in that series. We wanted to see the vascularization, and we didn't find any difference in the 2 groups in vascularization in these cases. Now, this is the video to show how intracameral and intrastomal voriconazole is given. AC paracentesis is done first, followed by the anterior chamber wash. And these exudates which are present in the anterior chamber are first washed away, followed by the injection of the intrastomal voriconazole, which is 50 micrograms per 0.1 ml. These injections can be repeated at an interval of 72 hours, and we have repeated a maximum of up to 3 injections. This is followed by giving the intrastromal injections, which are given with a 30-gauge needle, and they are given from an area which is relatively normal, not thinned out because otherwise it will lead to perforations. And it is given in 4 to 5 hemimeridians, just like you form in cases of a macular grid, a barrage around the macula. Similarly, you form a barrage around the corneal abscess that is present. This is, in short, what I had told you, the algorithm that we follow for cases of fungal keratitis. We have now also developed Netamatrix in our ocular pharmacology department, and we have patented it, a drug delivery system which can be injected intrastromally into the cases where fungal keratitis is there. And another product that we have worked on is natamycin, Netasol, which is actually natamycin 5%, but is polymerized in such a fashion that it becomes soluble. Coming to another important keratitis, that is microsporidial keratitis, because it has come up in a big way now, and recently it has been reclassified as a fungus. It can present as keratoconjunctivitis and corneal stromal keratitis, and it generally presents as the non-purulent papillary or follicular conjunctivitis. Also, there could be multiple course punctate raised epithelial lesions, and you have to differentiate it from adenoviral or herpes lesions, and it tends to be coarser, larger, and raised as compared to these lesions. The stromal keratitis due to microsporidia is quite rare, and when present, it has multifocal deep stromal infiltrates with endoexudates. It can be identified on KOH, Ziehl-Neelsen stain, and Gram stain, and also histopathologically it shows band nucleus with HNE and with HNE, And for definitive genus identification, you have to do electron microscopy and molecular methods. Microsporidal keratoconjunctivitis is a self-limiting, and people have also done debridement and used fluoroquinolones. And various drugs have been used for microsporidal stromal keratitis, such as PHMB, propamidine, chlorhexidine, and fumimidine. Coming to the last keratitis, that is the acanthamoeba keratitis, again important for us because it does not occur in, it occurs more frequently in fact in non-contact lens wearers as compared to contact lens wearers. And this is the therapy which is generally advocated for this, that is a combination therapy of bigonide, PHMB or chlorhexidine 0.02% and diamidine, propamidine 0.1% or hexamidine, which is given for almost 6 months, and if there's an inadequate response, then you think of a bacterial or herpes infection. Topical steroids have a role to play, especially if there's anterior scleritis, severe pain, indolent ulcer, and AC inflammation, and one can withdraw the steroids after inflammation is controlled for 4 weeks of bigonide. And surgical management is done in cases where there is perforation or impending perforation, and much of it is given in the 2 review articles that we did on management of corneal perforation in Survey of Ophthalmology and another one in Current Opinions of Ophthalmology. The healing of the corneal ulcer should be like this, which shows epithelialization and healing of the and a smooth surface with no fluorescein staining. Unlike this, a case which underwent corneal thinning and perforation and eventually required a therapeutic keratoplasty. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dr.